Someone ate the wrong mushroom today. Not today exactly, but today, 5,000 years ago, and 10,000 years before that, and 100,000 years before that. Someone picked something off the ground, put it in their mouth, and died. And the person next to them watched, and remembered, and did not pick that one again. That is the entire story of how humans figured out which mushrooms were poisonous, except it is not. Because the real story is far stranger, far darker, and far more interesting than a simple lesson learned around a campfire. The real story involves tasting death on purpose, using animals as living test kits, building the first chemical laboratories out of dirt and fire, and developing a system of knowledge so precise and so reliable that it has been passed down without a single book for over 100,000 years. This is the story of how humans learned which mushrooms would kill them, and it is one of the most remarkable things our species has ever done. Let us start with the problem, because the mushroom problem is genuinely one of the hardest problems early humans ever faced. And to understand why, you need to understand what makes mushrooms so dangerous and so confusing at the same time. Mushrooms do not look like other dangerous things. A fire looks dangerous. A snake looks dangerous. A cliff looks dangerous. Your eyes and your brain can process those threats without any prior experience. But a poisonous mushroom and a safe mushroom can look almost completely identical. Same color, same size, same shape, same smell. Growing in the same place at the same time of year. The death cap mushroom, Amanita phalloides, is one of the deadliest organisms on Earth. It is responsible for more fatal mushroom poisonings than any other species. And it looks like a perfectly ordinary, perfectly edible mushroom. It does not smell bad. It does not taste bitter. In fact, people who have eaten it by mistake and survived describe it as tasting quite pleasant, right up until the moment their liver began to fail. That is the problem. The danger is completely invisible. There is no warning. There is no signal your body can detect before it is already too late. Now imagine facing that problem without a library, without a phone, without any written language at all, without chemistry, without biology, without any of the tools that modern science uses to identify toxic compounds. You are a human being living 50,000 years ago in a forest. You are hungry. All around you are mushrooms. Some of them will give you energy and nutrients and keep you alive through a cold night. Some of them will shut down your liver in 3 days. You cannot tell which is which just by looking. You have no books to check. You have no tests you can run. You have nothing except your senses, your memory, your community, and your willingness to take a risk that might kill you. How do you solve that problem? How does any human community solve that problem? The answer is one of the most fascinating stories in the entire history of human knowledge. And it starts with the fact that humans are not the only animals that eat mushrooms. Here is something most people do not know. Early humans watched animals the way a scientist watches an experiment. Because for a hunter who spent every day in the forest, animal behavior was information. Critical, life-saving information. They noticed which mushrooms the deer ate and came back healthy from. They noticed which ones animals walked past without touching. They noticed which ones made small rodents sick. And they used that as a first filter, not perfect, but a starting point before anyone had to risk their own life. But animal observation alone was never enough. Different species have different tolerances. The fly agaric, the bright red mushroom with white spots, is eaten by reindeer without harm. For humans, it causes hallucinations, vomiting, and in large doses, death. So watching animals gave early humans useful information, but it also gave them deadly wrong information. So they needed something more, a system. And the system they developed over tens of thousands of years was something modern scientists would recognize as empirical testing. Trial and observation, with consequences. The first part of the system was communal memory. When someone ate a mushroom and got sick, that information spread immediately to every person in the group. What did it look like? Where did they find it? What time of year? How long before symptoms started? All of it shared, repeated, memorized, passed to the next generation. Spoken, never written. And here is what makes this remarkable. Human memory for survival critical information is extraordinarily good. We remember things that could kill us far better than we remember neutral things. Scientists call this the negativity bias. The information about which mushrooms killed people was burned into the memory of everyone who witnessed it, and it stayed there. The second part of the system was incremental testing. When a community found a new mushroom, they did not simply eat it or avoid it forever. They tested it in stages. First, sensory checks. How does it smell raw? What happens when you break it open? Does the color change in air? Does it bruise? These checks were not random. Over generations, communities built a mental library of signals. Certain smells correlate with certain compounds. Certain color changes point to certain chemicals, not perfect, but real. Discovered entirely through accumulated observation. If a mushroom passed the sensory check, the next stage was taste testing, not eating. A tiny piece on the tip of the tongue. Held there, not swallowed. Some toxic compounds cause immediate burning or numbing. Some cause a bitter taste the body recognizes as a warning before the toxin even reaches the blood. Any reaction at all and the mushroom was discarded. No reaction, and a very small amount was actually swallowed. Then waiting. Hours of watching the person who ate it, looking for nausea, dizziness, stomach pain, sweating. If nothing happened after a full day, slightly more was tried. More waiting, more watching. This process took days. It was slow, careful. Occasionally fatal, but systematic. A scientific method applied to a survival problem by people who had never heard the word science. The third part of the system was categorization. Over hundreds of generations, communities organized mushrooms into mental categories, not with Latin names, with descriptions detailed enough to be passed on. The one that grows under oak trees in autumn with a ring around the stem. The one that bleeds red when you cut it. The one that smells like anise after rain. The one that turns blue when you press it. These descriptions, passed from parent to child across thousands of years, became the first field guides to mushroom identification. Not written, not illustrated, held entirely inside human heads and human voices, and they worked well enough that communities across every continent developed reliable systems for identifying safe mushrooms without any of the tools modern mycology relies on. Here's what that knowledge looks like today. Indigenous communities that maintain their traditional ecological knowledge can identify hundreds of mushroom species with a reliability that surprises professional mycologists. They know not just which ones are safe, but under what conditions. Some safe when cooked are dangerous raw. Some safe in small amounts are dangerous in large ones. Some safe alone become dangerous with alcohol. Some safe for adults cause reactions in children. This level of nuance took a very long time and many deaths to develop. It is one of the most sophisticated bodies of knowledge human beings have ever built, without writing, without laboratories, without any formal institution of any kind. There's one more piece of this story that deserves attention. Not all the knowledge humans built about mushrooms was about avoiding death. Some of it was about seeking something else entirely. Certain mushrooms produce profound changes in human consciousness. Visions. A feeling of connection to something much larger than ordinary life. The use of these mushrooms in ritual goes back at least 10,000 years. The knowledge required to use them safely is just as sophisticated as the knowledge required to avoid the deadly ones. How much to eat? When? What preparation? What to expect? All of it developed through the same system of careful observation and communal memory. The same process, a very different outcome. So how did humans figure out which mushrooms were poisonous? They watched everything around them. They remembered everything that happened. They tested carefully and slowly, and with as much caution as a world without safety nets allowed. They shared what they learned immediately and completely. They organized that knowledge into systems detailed enough to be passed down through generations without ever writing a single word. And they kept doing all of this every year in every community across every continent for hundreds of thousands of years. The answer to this question is not a single moment, not a single discovery, not a single brilliant person who figured it all out one afternoon. It is the accumulated, careful, painful knowledge of every human community that ever lived near a forest and needed to eat. built over an almost incomprehensible stretch of time, paid for with real human lives, kept alive through nothing more than human voices, passing what they knew to the people who came after them. It is one of the oldest and most deeply human things there is, the decision to learn from what almost killed you, to turn danger into knowledge, and to make absolutely sure that the person standing right next to you never has to learn the hard way again.